Imagine a sitting U.S. senator, a day trader working out of their basement, and an active duty military officer all logging into the exact same website.
Right, which sounds like the setup to a joke, honestly.
It really does. But they aren't checking the news, and they aren't looking at a normal stock ticker either. They are all looking to bet a portion of a $250 million pool on whether a specific geopolitical crisis is about to explode.
Yeah, and that sounds like a pitch for a tense political thriller, but
But if you were looking at the data yesterday, imagine a sitting U.S. senator, a day trader working out of their basement, and an active duty military officer all logging into the exact same website.
right, which sounds like the setup to a joke, honestly.
It really does. But they aren't checking the news, and they aren't looking at a normal stock ticker either. They are all looking to bet a portion of a $250 million pool on whether a specific geopolitical crisis is about to explode.
Yeah, and that sounds like a pitch for a tense political thriller, but
But if you were looking at the data yesterday, May 1st, 2026, that isn't a script. That is a reality.
it's the new reality, really, of how information is processed globally. We're looking at a system where human attention, inside knowledge, and just mass amounts of capital are all colliding.
Colliding to essentially force the truth out into the open, right?
Exactly.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. We've got a stack of sources today detailing a really massive data dump from the prediction markets.
Yeah, and these platforms have been quietly building momentum for a while.
Oh, absolutely. But yesterday, the tension just completely snapped. I mean, we are talking about the exact moment a whole series of tectonic global and domestic events resolved all simultaneously.
It was a huge day.
It really was. And the mission today is to explore how these markets didn't just react to the news, they practically front ran it, capturing the fallout of government policy, military ops, and even the future of trillion-dollar tech companies.
Yeah, if there is a unifying theme to what we are dissecting today, it is this concept of capital hunting for certainty.
I like that.
Because what you see in this data is a relentless drive to close open loops. Like the moment a major paralyzing uncertainty is resolved, the market instantly reorganizes itself to ask the next logical question.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the biggest open loop in domestic policy finally slammed shut late yesterday afternoon.
Finally.
Right. I was watching the feeds when President Trump signed the Homeland Security funding bill. So late yesterday, April 30th, at 6:23 p.m. EDT, the record-breaking federal government shutdown is officially over.
Just like that.
Yeah. But what I don't fully grasp is how it happened so suddenly after months of gridlock. Like, what actually broke the dam here?
Well, the mechanism is really the key.
Imagine a sitting U.S. senator, a day trader working out of their basement, and an active duty military officer all logging into the exact same website.
Right, which sounds like the setup to a joke, honestly.
It really does. But they aren't checking the news, and they aren't looking at a normal stock ticker either. They are all looking to bet a portion of a $250 million pool on whether a specific geopolitical crisis is about to explode.
Yeah, and that sounds like a pitch for a tense political thriller, but
But if you were looking at the data yesterday, May 1st, 2026, that isn't a script. That is a reality.
it's the new reality, really, of how information is processed globally. We're looking at a system where human attention, inside knowledge, and just mass amounts of capital are all colliding.
Colliding to essentially force the truth out into the open, right?
Exactly.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. We've got a stack of sources today detailing a really massive data dump from the prediction markets.
Yeah, and these platforms have been quietly building momentum for a while.
Oh, absolutely. But yesterday, the tension just completely snapped. I mean, we are talking about the exact moment a whole series of tectonic global and domestic events resolved all simultaneously.
It was a huge day.
It really was. And the mission today is to explore how these markets didn't just react to the news. They practically front ran it, capturing the fallout of government policy, military ops, and even the future of trillion-dollar tech companies.
Yeah, if there is a unifying theme to what we are dissecting today, it is this concept of capital hunting for certainty.
I like that.
Because what you see in this data is a relentless drive to close open loops. Like the moment a major paralyzing uncertainty is resolved, the market instantly reorganizes itself to ask the next logical question.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the biggest open loop in domestic policy finally slammed shut late yesterday afternoon.
Finally.
Right. I was watching the feeds when President Trump signed the Homeland Security funding bill. So late yesterday, April 30th, at 6:23 p.m. EDT, the record-breaking federal government shutdown is officially over.
Just like that.
Yeah. But what I don't fully grasp is how it happened so suddenly after months of gridlock. Like, what actually broke the dam here?
Well, the mechanism is really the key to understanding why the markets reacted the way they did. I mean, this wasn't a sudden, unified change of heart in Congress.
Obviously not.
Right. The shutdown ended via a highly specific parliamentary maneuver called budget reconciliation.
Okay, I've heard that term thrown around a lot. What does it actually allow them to do?
So in the U.S. Senate, normally most major legislation requires 60 votes to overcome a filibuster, right?
Yeah, which is what causes all these massive standoffs.
Exactly. But budget reconciliation is this special process that allows certain bills related to spending and revenue
Hmm.
to pass with just a simple 51-vote majority.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So what lawmakers managed to do here was surgically extract the funding for immigration enforcement, which, was the radioactive core of this entire standoff, and isolate it within a reconciliation vehicle.
So by compartmentalizing that one issue, they completely bypassed the 60-vote threshold.
Right. They pushed the funding through and got the core government apparatus funded again. Completely neutral process, but highly effective.
So they essentially found a procedural bypass valve to get the lights turned back on.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And the reaction on platforms like Kalshi was instantaneous. I mean, the volume data here is wild. Traders who had been holding contracts betting the shutdown would last at least 80 days.
Will resolve before 100 days.
Yes, exactly. They saw their positions settle the second the ink dried.
And notice what happened to that capital immediately after those contracts paid out. I mean, prediction markets completely abhor a vacuum.
So it has to go somewhere.
Exactly. The moment a macroeconomic event resolves, the liquidity instantly flows downstream to measure the physical consequences.
Which brings up my absolute favorite data point from the domestic stack. The macro debate over government funding ended, and within minutes, a massive surge of money poured into a new market, predicting the average TSA wait times at JFK and LAX airports for the next morning.
It's brilliant. It perfectly illustrates the physical friction of policy.
Right, because a government shutdown feels super abstract when you're just watching politicians argue on television.
Totally. But turning the government back on is a massive logistical undertaking.
I always think of it like turning a massive auto factory back on after a prolonged labor strike.
Oh, yeah.
You can't just flip a giant red switch in the manager's office and assume cars are instantly going to roll off the line. You have to walk down to the factory floor and physically watch the conveyor belts to see if the gears are actually moving.
To see if the workers are at their stations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If the supply chain actually holds up. And in this scenario, the conveyor belt is the TSA security line.
What's fascinating here is that is a highly accurate way to look at it. The market shifts from predicting whether the government will function to testing how efficiently it can reboot.
Because it's not instantaneous.
No, not at all. You have to account for returning staff, scheduling backlogs, back pay processing, lapsed security clearances. The traders are essentially crowdsourcing a real-time stress test of American infrastructure.
They are putting a financial premium on logistical reality.
Exactly.
But, the domestic reboot is really just the opening act of what happened yesterday. Because at the exact same time the shutdown was ending, an incredibly intense global deadline hit.
Oh, man, yeah.
We are moving from airport security lines to a $270 million liquidity pool on Polymarket.
Which is just a staggering number.
It is an absurd amount of money focused on one question.
It's a threshold-crossing amount of capital, really.
Yeah.
And the phrasing of the question tied to that capital is critical to understand.
Right. So the market asked, will U.S. forces enter Iran by April 30?
Right.
Now, looking at the news, Congress did not declare war. The president didn't announce a formal invasion, but the market resolved as a yes, triggering a massive payout.
It did.
I understand from the sources that special operations teams were conducting rescue missions for air crews inside the border yesterday, but how does a decentralized platform actually verify and enforce a payout on something so classified and chaotic?
So they rely on what the industry calls oracles and hyper-rigid smart contract criteria. Prediction markets, they do not care about political rhetoric or the colloquial definition of war.
They just want the facts.
Exactly. The contract didn't ask about a treaty or an invasion force. It asked a binary physical question. Will U.S. forces enter the territory?
Oh, I see.
And the smart contract relies on predetermined, trusted data sources, like specific international news wires or official Department of Defense press releases.
Got it.
Once those designated sources confirm the physical presence of special ops teams inside the sovereign borders to execute those rescues, the physical criteria was met. The smart contract automatically executes. There's no appeals process.
Wow, that ruthless objectivity is fascinating, but it leads directly to the massive regulatory bombshell in our sources today.
Yeah, this is huge.
Because these markets have grown so large and honestly so shockingly accurate at predicting these realities, the U.S. Senate held a unanimous vote yesterday to permanently bar its own members from trading on them. Unanimous.
Right. This is a profound structural shift for the industry.
Right.
To understand the Senate's sudden urgency here, we really have to look back at the precedent set just a couple of weeks ago.
You mean the DOJ indictment?
Yes, the Department of Justice handed down a highly controversial indictment against a U.S. soldier for insider trading on these exact platforms.
Okay, wait. I need to stop right here and push back on this whole concept because this seems like a massive contradiction to me.
How so?
Well, if soldiers who know where troops are moving and senators who sit in classified intelligence briefings are jumping on these sites to place bets, aren't they just manipulating the market?
Oh, I see what you mean.
Right. If insiders are playing the game, it's just a rigged casino where the House knows the outcome. How does that make the market a legitimate tool? Doesn't it completely invalidate the whole idea of predicting the future?
It is a completely valid concern, but you really have to separate the ethics of the individual from the mechanics of the market. Let's examine your casino analogy.
Okay.
You don't ban insiders from playing a roulette wheel because a roulette wheel is governed by pure mathematical chance. Inside knowledge doesn't change where the ball lands.
Sure.
You ban insiders from trading the stock market because the stock market is anchored to fundamental realities, earnings reports, mergers, supply chain disruptions, realities that insiders can actually foresee.
Okay, so you're saying the Senate is treating a Polymarket contract on Iran exactly the same way the SEC treats a share of Apple stock.
Precisely.
Mm.
By legally classifying geopolitical prediction markets in the same behavioral category as Wall Street equities, the Senate is formally conceding that these platforms are not gambling sites.
They're legitimate markets.
Yes. They are highly efficient information aggregation engines. When an insider places a massive bet based on classified knowledge, they are leaving a footprint. They are injecting the truth into the market price.
Oh.
The market itself isn't rigged. It is actually functioning perfectly by absorbing that inside information and adjusting the odds for everyone else to see.
I see. So the platform is acting like a giant vacuum for truth.
Exactly.
It is so effective at extracting the reality of a situation that the people with secret knowledge are essentially forced to tip their hand if they want to profit from it. So the Senate isn't banning members because the markets are fake. They are banning them because the markets are too real.
That is the exact takeaway. The scale is what forced their hand here. A $270 million pool isn't just hobbyists making educated guesses anymore.
Right, serious capital.
It is large enough to attract the people who are actually in the room making the decisions. The Senate recognized the glaring ethical vulnerability of a lawmaker potentially voting to authorize a military action while holding a massive financial position on that exact outcome.
That makes total sense. Banning themselves is the ultimate validation of the platform's power. So, if the government is finally turning its lights back on, and the immediate geopolitical tail risks have been priced in and resolved, what happens to all that capital? Where does $250 million go when it isn't worried about surviving the day?
It's a great question.
Looking at the data, it seems like the capital immediately starts trying to price the future, and that future is heavily focused on the tech sector.
Yeah, it's a natural pivot from risk management to expansion. When macro-level fears subside, institutional and retail attention historically shifts toward innovation and growth.
And nothing says growth quite like the numbers we are seeing around SpaceX.
Oh, absolutely.
The sources show that the highly anticipated SpaceX IPO roadshow is officially slated to begin on June 8th, and the Kalshi odds are currently sitting at an 81% probability of an official IPO announcement before August 1st.
Yeah.
And the valuation they are floating is $2 trillion. $2 trillion.
$2 trillion is a number that forces you to recalibrate how you view corporate entities entirely. I mean, if they hit that valuation on the public market, you're looking at a private space exploration company rivaling the gross domestic product of entire developed nations like Italy or Canada.
It's mind-boggling. But SpaceX is still private right now. How does a prediction market actually price a $2 trillion company before it even hits the New York Stock Exchange? What are these traders actually measuring?
So they are essentially front-running the institutional appetite. The IPO roadshow you mentioned is a critical mechanism.
Right.
That is when the company's executives travel around pitching the massive institutional investors, the big banks, the pension funds, the sovereign wealth funds.
Yeah.
The prediction markets allow retail traders and analysts to create a synthetic secondary market that gauges how well those closed-door pitches are going. An 81% probability doesn't just mean people think the IPO is a good idea.
What does it mean then?
It means the collective intelligence of the market believes the legal, financial, and regulatory dominoes are already falling.
Wow. It's like we are financially eavesdropping on the most exclusive boardrooms in the world.
Pretty much.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because the tech obsession in these markets isn't just limited to rockets and valuations. There is a completely different mechanism playing out in the software space.
Yeah, the AI markets.
Exactly. The sources highlight something called the AI vibe check. On Kalshi, the artificial intelligence model Claude currently holds a staggering 99% probability for best AI this week, backed by nearly $400,000 in trading volume.
Which is massive for that kind of contract.
It really is. Meanwhile, Gemini is trending at a 16% probability for best AI next month.
This represents a fundamental shift in how society evaluates digital utility.
How so? Because honestly, when I first read this, I wondered why anyone would care about betting on a chatbot. I mean, we already have a million websites dedicated to reviewing software, right? We have tech blogs, we have five-star rating systems on app stores. Why do we need a financial market to tell us which AI is the best?
Think about the fundamental flaw in traditional review systems. The internet is completely drowning in noise. Written reviews can be fabricated by bots.
Oh, yeah, fake reviews are everywhere.
Right. Tech blogs can be swayed by public relations budgets and early access privileges. App Store ratings are often gamified. There is very little penalty for being wrong or being dishonest in a standard review.
That's very true.
Prediction markets change that dynamic entirely by introducing skin in the game.
You mean the financial risk acts as a filter?
Exactly. When you see $400,000 concentrated on Claude being the most effective tool this week, you are not looking at a marketing campaign.
You're looking at people putting their money where their mouth is.
Right. You are looking at a quantified consensus of developers, enterprise users, and researchers who are risking their own capital to declare what works. If a tech company tries to artificially inflate their own product on a prediction market,
Opposing traders will just gladly take their money by betting against the hype.
exactly. It is a financialized truth engine that instantly bankrupts bad opinions.
That is a phenomenal way to frame it. It cuts through the corporate spin completely. You don't have to listen to a CEO promise that their new update is revolutionary.
No, you really don't.
You just look at the dashboard and say, okay, the people who actually code for a living are putting thousands of dollars on the line to prove this other tool is empirically better right now.
And the structure of the contracts provides incredible nuance, too.
How do you mean?
Well, Claude dominating the this week metric shows immediate practical stability in current workflows. But Gemini, holding 16% and climbing for next month, suggests that professional users are anticipating a major patch release, or maybe actively testing beta features that they believe will disrupt the current hierarchy.
So it is a real-time, forward-looking benchmark.
Absolutely.
Which brings us to the most surreal juxtaposition in this entire stack of sources.
Okay.
We've spent this entire time dissecting how these platforms act as ruthlessly efficient oracles for government infrastructure, covert military operations, and trillion-dollar tech valuations. Yet, the final major trend capturing the volume yesterday has absolutely nothing to do with global survival or enterprise software.
Well, human nature requires an outlet.
It really does. Because while the institutions are trying to price the SpaceX roadshow, everyday retail traders are swarming these exact same platforms for Elimination Friday in the NBA playoffs.
Yeah, the volume on tonight's basketball slate is massive.
It's crazy. The sources show the Houston Rockets are heavily favored, I think minus 178 to close out the Los Angeles Lakers. The Detroit Pistons are sitting as slight 3.5-point favorites in a decisive game against the Orlando Magic. And looking at the macro championship picture, Polymarket has the Oklahoma City Thunder holding a 51% conviction rate to take the whole thing. I just find it bizarre that the same underlying architecture processing $270 million war bets is concurrently processing a Friday night basketball game.
It might seem bizarre on the surface, sure, but from a systems perspective, it is entirely necessary.
Why is that?
Sports betting provides the baseline liquidity that keeps these platforms robust. The retail traders logging in to bet on the Oklahoma City Thunder are interacting with the exact same smart contracts and decentralized ledgers that the geopolitical analysts are using.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, that constant churn of entertainment-driven capital subsidizes the infrastructure and ensures the platforms are deeply liquid, and it normalizes the interface for the general public.
So the basketball bets are essentially paying to keep the servers running for the geopolitical truth engines.
Pretty much.
That really emphasizes how ubiquitous this technology has become. It has evolved into a centralized dashboard for human attention.
And that is the ultimate takeaway for anyone trying to navigate this landscape. You don't necessarily need to place a trade to extract value from these platforms.
You can just watch them.
Right. Monitoring these markets is the ultimate shortcut to being well-informed. When a crowd is financially incentivized to be correct, their collective behavior filters out the noise of traditional media. You are given a raw, unfiltered read on what the world believes is about to happen, prioritized by where they are willing to put their money.
Which perfectly encapsulates the massive vibe shift we just walked through. To recap the May 1st data, the longest government shutdown in U.S. history ended, sending capital instantly flowing downstream to test the physical recovery of our infrastructure.
Right.
$250 million market resolved on a strict physical definition of military intervention in Iran. The U.S. Senate unanimously recognized the overwhelming power of these platforms by legally barring themselves from participating.
Which is huge.
The market is pricing in near certainty for a historic $2 trillion SpaceX public debut. AI utility is now being evaluated by financialized consensus rather than marketing blogs. And underneath it all, millions of dollars are still flowing into a Friday night basketball game.
It is a staggering amount of resolution for a single 24-hour cycle. The tension finally broke, and the markets captured the ripple effect perfectly.
They really did. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We've established that these platforms are incredibly effective at measuring reality. They aggregate inside knowledge and financial risk to predict the future with terrifying accuracy.
They do.
But as these capital pools grow from hundreds of millions to eventually billions of dollars, the incentives start to warp. If a specific geopolitical outcome or a targeted corporate failure guarantees a massive multi-million-dollar payout, how long until bad actors stop trying to predict the event and start trying to cause it? At a certain scale, are these platforms just measuring the truth, or are they actively putting a bounty on reality? It's something to consider the next time you see the odds suddenly shift. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.